Let me tell you a story about a Greek hero, you in fact. While your story seemed to have ended, you couldn't be more wrong. It has just begun. You awaken in Elysium, but something has gone wrong. The lands are torn asunder, and this once Greek mythological paradise is now in ruins. Embark upon your airship and find out what's gone wrong in this game of Echoes of Elysium. Today we are joined by the Loric Games CEO Brian and lead engineer Alex to give us some details on this upcoming survival RPG. We first heard about Echoes of Elysium during the Summer Game Fest, and we were instantly excited about it. But in your guys' own words, can you describe Echoes of Elysium?
So Echoes of Elysium is really it is a survival, it's an airship survival RPG, right? That's what it's all about. It's about being on an airship, living on an airship, and surviving in this world of Elysium, right? We picked Elysium because we believe we love the Greek lore and all the things that can come from it that we can bring to fruition through narrative and through game design and combat. But we also loved airships. And so we set out on this crazy journey to somehow find a way to bring those two things together. I think the whole team writ large comes from being gamers first, game developers second. Although that might change depending on the day. And we really, all of us play a lot of survival games. We love the genre, and so we thought to ourselves, man, we've got a great pedigree in RPG, and the team predominantly being from Mythic Entertainment, a lot of us. So we have a lot of experience building RPGs. We love survival games. We like the Greek mythology, and we love airships. So we're like, well, let's just put all that together and see if we can make something awesome. And so we're excited that the gamers that will come and play our game will get to experience truly epic journey on an airship in this world of Elysium, and go on an odyssey of their own.
It's a survival game, um, where you're not stuck in place. You're going on a heroic journey, and that's one of the things that the airship really facilitates.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very nomadic experience. I think it's one of the things that, when we've looked at other games in the genre that we love so deeply, such as Valheim, is a great example of that, where there was a lot of base building centrally, and then sort of like bases you'd build further away, and using portals to get back and forth, all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of fun. And I think when we started looking at airships and we thought about what it'd be like to live and breathe on an airship, to survive on an airship, we really wanted to tackle that romantic nomadic experience. What is it like when you and your friends set sail into the world, into the unknown, and to go on this Greek odyssey?
And for me, it kind of scratches the itch of wanting to play something like Skyrim, but with a vessel.
But what kind of world is awaiting players in this game?
Well, I think first off, it is a very open world, right? It is an odyssey we want you to go on, and we don't expect that you'll actually return often to where you've come from. That's not to say you won't. Sometimes you will, but it really is about moving forward with your airship and your friends, and actually not just building a single airship, but building a fleet of airships. We are inspired by the way Ark handled dinosaurs, right? And how you can use different dinosaurs, different tasks. And we looked at airships and we said, how do we make it so that airships are more than just your base? Like, it is awesome for them to be your base, but how can we leverage them to do more in the world, like harvest resources or combat? And we really wanted to engage that. So when our players get into the world, yes, they'll be flying airships, and yes, they'll be surviving on airships. But we hope they do so much more than that. We hope they build giant airship bases in the sky. We hope they build um, airships that are entirely geared towards just combat, or some that are really out to go harvest trees.
We're starting with the idea of the plane of Elysium, this mythical plane of the afterlife, and it's been fractured. It's almost dreamlike, the way that things are kind of like disconnected, and moving between them is, I think in some ways almost like waking up in a different dream sometimes.
One of the things I really am interested in: how are we flying ships in the sky?
I mean, I think the answer that you're looking for is Liftium. Liftium it's an element that is present throughout Elysium, and it's kind of the Higgs boson of the Elysian plane. It's what gives things lift. Some resources, if you chop them down, the lithium in them will actually cause them to float away if you're not careful. Lithium is the answer.
If I'm understanding this right, there is some sort of substance or airflow or whatever called lithium that is allowing you to sail up in the air.
We really wanted to make this a place of grandeur, right? It's why we chose a color palette that's bright and airy. It's why we went after a survival experience that's more epic than sort of just a dark survival experience. And lithium is a part of that experience for players. But everything in the world can be floating. It can be impacted. You can be using a harpoon to rein it into your ship. You're going to be dealing with other enemies that are also flying. So being in the skies and being surrounded by this world is a big part of it. It really is the resource that ties this whole world together and keeps it alive. It is the resource that allows for rivers to be found and for you to take to different island clusters. It powers all things in that respect.
You guys have talked about some other cool things here. You guys are talking about resource gathering, and Echoes of Elysium took an interesting approach to this, didn't it?
But we wanted to get the player to a place where they were experiencing a new way to harvest, a new way to gather. And so we wanted to say, what can we do if you were on an airship and you needed to gather a ton of resources? How would you do it? Well, you could jump off your ship and go cut it down with an axe. That's certainly possible, and that is something you can do in our game. But wouldn't it be much cooler if you could have like a giant reaper that is the saw blade cannon that fires saw blades into a forest and cuts down a bunch of trees, and you see them falling over in the distance, and then the logs that are remaining float up into the sky, like. And so that's really where our focus has been as a part of resource gathering. And the goal is to push the players up into the sky and get them to experience harvesting and resource gathering using the airship with their friends. How will harvesting work in our game with multiplayer?
In terms of multiplayer, there's lots of different ways that we can go about um, playing. So if you want to build a giant ship and have one person, manning something that's loosening resources, and then somebody else is using, like a net or something to drag them in. You can do it that way. You can split that job between multiple ships, so you could have like a fast light ship flying around and blasting down trees, and then have a big cargo ship coming up behind picking things up. So, how can we provide parts and mechanics that allow people to choose and build and strategize together? How they want to work together to make these things happen.
You talked about crashing your ships, and I'm kind of interested in that because you talked about mowing down an entire forest with one. Pretty sure that's not a good idea.
Your base is not invulnerable, right? And actually, your airship is a character in our game to some degree, or airships, as I say. I will pass this part over to Miss Alex to talk about sort of like airship death and how this works and why it's important.
They're made up all of these components. Components can take damage. They reflect visually that they've been damaged. You can repair them because the damage of them contributes to the overall health of the airship. So destroying an airship is it's a distributed thing. You can destroy one of the pieces and make it disappear, like with focused fire, or if you scrape up against the side of something that you shouldn't too closely, then you sort of like lose a chunk. But it doesn't require atomizing each one of those pieces in order to actually destroy an airship. You get down below that sufficient threshold, and it will explode.
And I think for our gamers and who we're targeting with this game, danger needs to be real. We're not trying, even though the world is bright and airy, we're not trying to build a game that is cozy. Right? It needs to be dangerous. It needs to be, you need to feel the danger when your airship explodes. Now, we have some mechanics to make sure that after that happens, the corruption experience is good and that you can rebuild your ship and everything will be okay. Right? We want to make sure that happens, but we need to make sure that danger is real. And by the way, if you're near your friend's airship and it's about to explode, you may want to get away, because the explosion may not just limit itself to the single ship that is currently about to explode. I think one of the things we talk about inside the studio all the time is to, again, to pay tip our hat to Valheim, was just such a fantastic game. But when you talk to people about that game, one of the things that comes up pretty regular is the death skeeto. The first time you find yourself accidentally in the field, not knowing that's what it is, and this mosquito comes out of nowhere, or bee, or whatever it is, and trounces you in one shot and then just hangs around. And so now you're stuck in this sort of funny moment of like all of your gear is on your person. It's in this field. You've got to get your friends in this rallying cry and run in a loincloth across the world to try and get to your body. And there's interesting, but you play that experience as a single player, it's actually not all that great because you're alone. It can be challenging, it can be a little bit annoying, but when you're playing with your friends, it becomes that rallying cry of, hey, can we all get? I need to go get my stuff, right? When we thought about airships and we thought about airship death, we really wanted to emulate that experience of, if you're out there in the world and you decide to go into combat with a ship that isn't maybe quite ready for that, or if you get surprised by Heron's malice, we really wanted to create that experience of danger.
Are you going to be able to free build, or are these
Mhm.
dry docks the way you actually build upon your ship? So, like, if you have a part destroyed, do you have to go to a dry dock, or are you able to build on your ship on the fly?
As it is right now, we're launching an early access. You will go to dry docks to build. Dry dock, of course, is your safe space, right? It is one of the areas in the game that you can go to be safe and not constantly be worried about being attacked. And so it's a good place to build. But you might need to build on the fly, replace a wall, do that kind of stuff every now and again when you're flying. And that's the balance we're working with right now.
Yeah. And because I would lose my engineer credentials if I didn't get hyper specific and split hairs, um, the repairing of a damaged part, that's we don't consider that building, so that's something that you can do wherever as long as you've constructed the right items to do so. And we do have buildings split into sort of two different categories. The big structural ones are the ones that you need to do at the dry dock. The ship size is limited by the dry dock size. So if you want to build a bigger ship, then you need to go to a bigger dry dock. That does, create some interesting interactions with the ideas of going back to places that have, smaller dry docks. Um, on the one hand, maybe you can't park there, but on the other hand, now you have this big giant ship that you didn't have, last time, and this is a small dry dock area, so maybe you don't actually need the dry dock because your ship is so big. But how other things like crafting stations and things like that, those are ones that you can free build. So let's say we're on a big ship and we're flying along, and at least as it is at the moment, if you're using a crafting station and I want to craft something, I can find a free spot and build a crafting station, and do my crafting as well without having to go back to the dry dock.
But you guys keep talking about these dangers in the game. What kind of monsters or creatures can they expect to find in Echoes of Elysium?
Setting the stage, Elysium is a Greek afterlife where heroes go after they've died. But it wasn't like traditional sort of sense of heaven or anywhere else. It's like a good place for good people, right? Elysium is actually where heroes go, and they are invited through the heroic actions they perform. That doesn't necessarily mean they're good people. It just means they are heroes in their own light. So in Elysium, you have all these heroic souls are there, and as you will discover why and how it's going to be, these constructs, these robotic creatures you come across, are powered by these fallen souls. And so you'll come across a lot of these more robotic, more construction or construct like creatures. There is a mixture, though, of also natural and organic, more mythical creatures you'll come across as well, right? For early access, we're keeping for when we expect to launch, we're keeping that the number of enemies down, somewhat low. There'll be a good variety, but be pretty tightly controlled, and then releasing more as we sort of perfect how those enemies work in the world, how they work with your airship, right? Because we're trying to constantly balance two things: how do enemies attack and engage you as a player and your friends as a player, and then what kind of impact do they have on the airships? Because again, sort of talking about airships as being just another character in the game, and that's how we think about it. And so these enemies need to make sure they have attacks that go do damage not only to you but to your airship. How do they engage your airship? How do they engage you when you're on your airship? How do you engage them when you're on their airship? Which, yes, you will come across enemy
Wait, what?
airships in the world, and you will have to board them, and you have to deal with them. So this is a big part of that experience that we expect players to have with the enemy combatants.
But you also just hinted at the fact that there might be enemy ships that you might have to board and fight on, or are they going to possibly be flying and maybe you can have some ship combat in the sky?
I know the answer to that question is absolutely. I will hand to the engineer who's going to panic internally and quietly about how we're going to achieve all of this. But yes, it is 100% something that we're going to do. We think that that is a really required part of being an airship. In fact, we love a lot of the airship games we see out there in the world. We think there's a lot of floating island, Zelda, and cool stuff. But when we were looking and thinking about how the airships need to be in our world, for us, it's got to be there's got to be a combat experience with other airships. We think that's pretty important. Otherwise, it feels like it doesn't quite take advantage of the opportunity. I think also what you'll find is that if Miss Alex and I are playing and I shoot Miss Alex's ship with my cannon, it's going to do damage. And so friendly fire is a pretty big part of this experience we want everyone to have. It kind of goes back to that danger and cooperative behavior.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely want to do airship combat. I mean, it's like our pillar of the game. I mean, it's literally what our players stand on. So, we want to do as much of it, as we can. It's definitely something that we want to do. And there are some things that we're doing where we still like have enemy airships, but they're a little bit more static for now. But that also allows us to do things with them at a scale that we would not be able to if they were dynamic, but we do want to do the dynamic, enemy airships flying in. I mean, boarding them. I mean, come on, like who doesn't like, jumping on the deck of an enemy ship, with a sword or whatever. So that's very much one of the things that we're aspiring, to reach towards. As far as when that is on the schedule and everything, that's something else that's kind of up for grabs. And I think that's actually one of the things that's going to be really helpful from the community to find, what is it that they want out of that experience. So, sort of finding out in what ways that people are hungry for that experience.
Just a quick fire off question, say yes or no. Will I be able to grapple other ships with my grappling hook?
Yes.
With yes, with your harpoon.
Will I be able to ram through one of their sails and possibly disable the ship?
Yes.
Yes. Ooh, yeah, we agreed.
Next quick fire question. Will I be able to take over enemy ships?
No.
That's my quick fire questions, folks. There's probably lots more fun things we can do with them. Crafting sometimes can be quite laborious and quite annoying. How are you guys going to solve crafting in Echoes of Elysium to make it more of a quality of life feature than some sort of like boring task?
So we really you hear us talk about a lot of games, right? We are, as I mentioned, gamers in ourselves, right? So we play a lot of stuff. And one of the games I think a lot of the team really enjoys is Satisfactory, and we love the automated portion of it. Now we're not going to build a factory simulator. We just restate that again. We are not building a factory simulator. That doesn't mean
You
we
say it one
can't
more
take.
time?
Yeah, right, exactly. That doesn't mean that we can't find some fun ways to make automation interesting in our world. And so for us, the resource harvesting, of course, is already going to become more epic than what you might see in other games, and more sort of uh, resource the number of resources you might need might be greater, and so you can take advantage of your ship to achieve that. But how you turn those resources into crafted items also will follow a more heavily automated process. So early on you'll do a lot of standard crafting stuff, and then as the game progresses you will get to do more automated processing and crafting of resources. Dry docks will play a role in this. How you develop and build your airship will play a role in this. I mean, as Miss Alex sort of alluded to earlier, it is a weight on the airship matters, And so you got to be playing that game of what kind of ship am I building? And if you need to build a ship that's focused on processing resources to achieve a result or craft a set of items, you may not want to make that the same ship as your combat ship. And so, automation and automating the resource and crafting process will be a pretty big part of it. It'll take place on your ship. It'll take place at dry docks, and we hope people have a lot of fun with it.
And that's exactly it. I mean, I have dreams of adding some more features at some point.
We are going to bring something to market in early access that's going to be high polished. It's going to be fun and interesting. It is not going to be our full vision, and very much on purpose. We think the early access model was built to allow indie developers like us to put something out there into the world, to get feedback, and to build something truly epic with our players. We really want to lean into the community development model. So if you guys play our game and you love some of the automation stuff we've done there, guess what? More automation stuff's going to start showing up, and we encourage players to provide feedback to that end.
It sounds like you guys are really leaning heavy on the fact that you listen to what your community says. Not just a, oh, this is good feedback or on like how to improve this feature or maybe how to fix these bugs, but more of like actually they are helping shape the game to be a little bit different.
Bear will kill me if I do not specify this very clearly. Um, no, we are not going to take every single idea that someone gives us, and in some cases, even ideas that might work. Like, for example, this is not an MMO, and I think what we'd like to set the expectation for our community is you will always be heard, but we will always be transparent about when we're choosing to do things and why we're choosing to do things, and really try to give guidance around, hey, look, that idea might work, but we're just, it doesn't fit our core design principles. It's not what we're trying to achieve, right? It's okay to say no. And the more of a respectful community that we have and the more transparent we are about a process, we hope that the more people will see that we're taking in ideas and we're listening to them and we're considering them, and we're putting them against our vision for what we want the game to be long term.
Games are a process of iteration. You make something, you put it in, you now have new information, and that inspires you to think of something else. Um, and it's really exciting. One of the things that I'll say, at least once a week is, there's we have room for more game than we have time to make. And so it's really important that we engage the community to find out, to hey, what parts of those rooms, that room speaks to them, and make something that they really enjoy.
And I think as gamers and as a studio, we're kind of building a game that's going to push boundaries and that we want our players to go and use in ways we never expected, and help us build a really awesome Odyssey using those systems.
Are players going to be able to see their characters actually be able to evolve, like get skills or some other type of player based progression, or is it only going to be gear based, like that beautiful glider that you guys have showcased?
So we are going to be having an abilities tree that will come online as sort of a light RPG system. We're not going to go super heavy on the RPGs, but we are going to allow for different what we call archetypes. So what we view is how people play survival games. It's not your traditional mage or warrior or whatever. It is more geared towards people who love to just craft. And you have some people who love to just harvest. You know, some people who like to be the what we call the camp mom, who's always sort of making sure all the food is prepared and ready to go when you're going out on these journeys. And so we're trying to lean into an archetype system that takes advantage of that. So the skills trees that you will be able to unlock with your players will be predominantly focused on survival buffs and how you play survival games. The plan as of right now is to go early access with one archetype and a skill
Mhm.
tree, and we'll unlock additional archetypes and skill trees as we continue to develop the game, especially taking feedback from players. That is the current plan.
I've been to about six of your guys' dev streams on your guys' Discord, and you guys have just started doing it on Twitch. Now, you guys talked about how you wish to listen to your community. What makes you so transparent with actually your development process?
I mean, I don't know. I really like it. I would always get disappointed when I'd find out that there were sort of like big marketing community, like connections, outreach things, that involved things that I'd worked on that I didn't know about. I put myself in the space, the seat of a player, like so often. Being disconnected is not great. Like, it's why I do this stuff. And so the ability to be so transparent is just, I mean, I think it's just consistent with what we want to do with, this really being a game that we're listening to people and, sort of making with them, rather than it being, hey, I wrote this giant novel and this is exactly how everything's going to go.
Wrapping things up, do you guys have anybody you want to shout out? Any kind of thanks you want to give, or just your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, a shout out is anybody who built any of the games that we've talked about here and any of the other games you've played. I think we talk about success often here in the studio, and what does it mean? And we've all worked on big games that have had huge revenue targets and all that kind of stuff. And so when we got together, we really wanted to make sure we all understood what it meant to be successful here at Loric. And for us, what that means is that we are successful if we can build a game where two or three people are sitting around at a coffee shop or a bar somewhere, and our game has inspired those people to go make a game. That is how we know that we've been successful, because it means that we've been able to reach a level of fun and enjoyment that is truly inspirational for our players. That's what success looks like. Money will come. If we achieve that, money will come. And we need money. Look, this is a business. We are not artists that are just like that can survive without money. We need to pay salaries. We need to take care of ourselves. And that's, again, going back to the early access model. Part of what will help us fund really bringing this vision to life is using the early access model. So that's what success looks like for us as a studio. And so I want to start by just shouting out to all of the game developers who that's what come before us, which sounds sort of crazy, who have been working on this in this genre before us, and thank them for some of the awesome games they've built that have inspired us. And we hope we can pay that forward and inspire the rest of the players in the world.
Shout out to the rest of the team who, isn't with us here in this interview, because they're also, working on and driving this game, and are a huge part of it. Shout out to me, without whom I wouldn't be here. Uh,
It's
uh,
important to recognize yourself, right? Like, come
It
on.
is.
We're
I
talking to
don't want to
you.
disclose. I'm not going to disclose any names because this, for their privacy. But we did most recently have a new baby born in a part of the studio. So shout out to them and their family, and we wish them all the sleep that they'll never get. And so shout out to them for sure. And to Miss Alex point, everybody in the team is working so hard, for this game, what we're trying to do. And we hope that the community recognizes the effort we're putting in to try and bring something to life, and hopefully we exceed their expectations.
Well, folks, this is our early look at Echoes of Elysium. We were joined and a pleasure to have Brian and Alex to join us to talk about this amazing game made by Lore Games. The description and media links will be down in the description. Please go and give them a wish list, go into the Discord, and maybe I'll see you in one of the dev streams. Thank you very much for coming to talk for now.